Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to DeSoto County, to the Peace River Manasota Water Supply Authority Board of Directors meeting. It is June 7th, 2023, approximately 9:30 a.m. At this time, we'd like to call to order, introduce some people here today helping me on the board. Being as everybody else has got other stuff going on, but I have Chris Constance here from Charlotte County next to me. I have Mr. Mark Smith from Sarasota County here to my right, and Miss Katie Gilmore down here. She's sitting there by Doug. That way she can keep him punched up and he can keep up to today what's going on. But at this time, if y'all would, make sure your phones are silenced and so we don't hear your ringtone interrupt our meeting. At this time, if y'all would rise, and we'll do the invocation and followed by the pledge. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for a wonderful day, Lord. We just thank you for us living in a country where we can meet freely and discuss the things that matters to us, Lord, and peacefully get together and govern the water that we take care of. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for that water, that precious resource. Lord, we just ask now for wisdom and guidance, that we would make decisions that will glorify you and be the best for our constituents that we serve, dear Heavenly Father. Lord, be with our men and women that protect us and serve us at home and abroad. And we just thank you for all these things, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Flag right behind. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Ms. Hines, you here? Ms. Hines, she's our county administrator. She'll give us a little post comment.
Good morning, commissioners and attendees of the meeting. We're so glad to host you once again as we do quarterly. I wanted to just take a minute beyond our welcome to tell you how much we value the relationship we have, not just in the capacity here to be able to work regionally to manage this precious resource that we all have, but also the relationships that we have with Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte County goes beyond this. And when we can work together to regionally serve our constituents in this part of Florida, it's fantastic. This is the first meeting I've attended since Hurricane Ian, and I just want you to know how much from each of your counties, how much our administrations work together and how closely we work together to help each other, especially in times of need. So I appreciate that very much. I know our board appreciates it very much. So I'd love to talk to Jonathan and the administrations in Manatee, and of course we have great relationships in Charlotte County as well. So I appreciate that, being a smaller county, but hey, we sleep here and we spend our money in your counties when we shop, so it's nice to have that reciprocation, and I just wanted to tell you how much we value the relationship, not only in the authority, but in other capacities as well. And with that, I just welcome you, and I wish for a productive meeting.
Me and Mandy also talked this morning, and we'd be more than glad to host all the meetings here in DeSoto County. We don't have to get up as early, so it works out perfect. Anyway, at this time, it's open for public comment, and I have a card here from Mr. Tim Ritchie. You got 5 minutes, Tim, so you know the routine. And just give me your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Tim Ritchie, 2616 Via Veneto Drive, Punta Gorda, Florida. Good morning, everybody. Last week, I was up in Tampa attending the governing board meeting with Southwest Florida Water Management District. And their consent agenda item 2.4 was Regulation Committee Water Use Permit number 200114000.033. Mosaic Fertilizer LLC Integrated Water Use Permit. It has DeSoto on here. Hardy, Hillsborough, Manatee, Polk, Sarasota. This is a modification of an existing water use permit for modern mining dewatering for up to a new 3,002 acres extension. Their authorized annual average quantity remains at 69 million gallons per day. Now, since July of 2018, we have been in what is known as the Florida water quality crisis. I don't know if you all remember the pictures of the dead dolphins and the tonnage of sea waste from the red tide. But that red tide that we have right now is not just man-made. It is acerbated by acidic wastewater being discharged out of numerous outfalls. I've been here for 5.5 years. I have friends that are captains from Tampa all the way to Charlotte Harbor. The quality of our rivers are going down. There's a thing called MCLs, maximum concentration levels. And they are monitored through air, water, and land. And I will tell you, because I have now been studying this for over 5.5 years, and I have done very serious studies. And I was taught by one of the greatest management consultants in this country. And from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, one of the largest management consulting firms in this country. So I know how to do mathematical formulas and see if we're getting a balance that evens out. And it's not. When we have a company that's using more water per day than all of the citizens in Manatee, Sarasota, DeSoto, and Charlotte County, we have a real problem. And the quality of the water that's coming down from Hancock Lake is being severely abused. Now, I have been to multiple legislative delegation meetings. I have made numerous requests with Senator Al Britton, Rep. Grant, Rep. Spencer Roach. I've been down to Lee County's legislative delegation. I've been to Manatee. This NPDES permit, there are things that have to be addressed. The expansion's great. But if we have a drought of 2 or 3 years, or an environmental, we won't have enough water for a year, 1.5, 2 years. Water is the most valuable commodity in the world. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tim. You want now or after the meeting? Name and address for the record, because there's a lot of folks here probably don't know who you are.
Eric Howard, P.O. Box 284, Fort Ogden, Florida, 34267. Get my mail via Liberty Avenue, thanks to Mr. Langford. I want to practice my constitutional rights, as always, and today will be my right to freedom of speech. Mr. Ritchie reminded me of one of my stances that I have, and I don't think that I've addressed this board with it. And we got a couple of commissioners here that I'd like to hear my idea. And so I hear a lot of issues about the phosphate mining. We don't want mining here, we don't want mining there, and phosphate this, phosphate that. My comment has to do with that maybe this board and the commissioners in here and others can help support in advancing our country and our freedoms that we have here related to national security and those things associated with the phosphate mining, and that we have companies that aren't 100% domestic that want to mine phosphate, are mining phosphate. Our phosphate that we need for growing our fruits and vegetables and feeding our people is getting exported out of our country. And if we had some federal legislation to help keep our phosphate local and our fertilizer local, that could help out our country and our national security. I just wanted to throw that idea out there to the public when I had this opportunity to speak. I won't bring up any of my other propaganda today, Mr. Langford.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, last call. All right, consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I could just bring up one subject with the first item, the minutes.
Okay.
When I was reviewing, I watched the expansion, item 8, the item 7, the Peace River
Phase 3.
yeah, I think it was, I just got it here. It's listed as item, but it's the Peace River professional services for the brackish water. Yeah, that's correct. So it's item 8, and no issues with watch the video and look through the item, but the last page online shows the ranking, but it doesn't have the tab sheet or the people that were actually involved in the selection process. I don't see anything wrong. It's just for transparency reasons. So before the meeting, I spoke to Mr. Coates, and they showed me the actual item. So if we could just have that tab sheet attached, that's great. Then I would move that that addition to that item so that we have that on there, because it's in the record and it was actually shown to everybody involved in the process, but just never made it to the public. And we had talked about that years ago, making sure that those tab sheets are in there for full disclosure. So that's my motion, sir.
Okay, all right, have a motion on approval with the addition to add the tab by Commissioner Constance. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, have a second by Mr. Smith.
And one more discussion. So on the second item of the budget vote, I'm going to bring it up now, but you know, we talked about this, and again, I spoke to Mr. Coates before the meeting, and we've had pre-agenda on this. So I'm looking, and we'll talk more when we're looking at the 5-year CIP and the 20-year CNA, but when we're talking about the budget every year, as we get closer and closer to pulling the trigger, whatever we decide, whether it's the expansion of another reservoir or the brackish water, you know, I'm kind of speaking directly to Commissioner Smith. You know, we've got to decide, Sarasota and Charlotte County, we're going to be paying for like 95% of this. So really, at the staff level, I think, because we can't talk, which is crazy, but so, you know, whenever you're wearing that hat and whoever's sitting in the seat wears this hat, it's confusing. So staff has to really get together, and the two counties have to decide, you know, are we going to inflict the pain that this kind of money is going to cause our ratepayers? You know, is it justifiable? And how? And I'm really curious for Sarasota County, how are you baking it into your rates now? You know, is it fair to people that are already established ratepayers? You know, are they supposed to pay for all this expansion, or should the new folks coming online be hit with a pretty sizable impact fee for water that pays for the expansion? Because development is benefiting. I don't know that anybody else is. So we've got to really be clear about how, you know, how folks are paying for this. Because if I'm drawing water right now and I have a base rate and I'm paying per 1,000 gallons, you know, I'm fine. Why do I need another reservoir? Now the argument is we need a buffer, right? So, and again, Mr. Coates and I spoke, you know, resiliency makes sense. So maybe this big, huge chunk of money, maybe 17%, I'm just throwing a number. Maybe there's a portion of that the old folks have to pay to make sure the system is resilient for them when we're hitting against the current limits. But beyond that, it's very hard for me to sit when we wear our utility department, or we sit as CEO as a board for the utility in Charlotte County. It's not the taxpayers, it's the ratepayers. A few years back, we had to do a 7% per year increase. I don't know what this looks like, and it's not Mr. Coates' job to figure out what our ratepayers are doing. We have our own consultants with Breftelis, and they're going to have to sit down, but it may be very, very painful to increase those rates. And so these discussions about the brackish expansion or putting in the reservoir are very important. We're looking at possibly doing our own supply in Charlotte County. All of this is important, and it shouldn't get glossed over. So I'm glad you're there. Bring it back to your board, but I think maybe because we can't talk unless we're in a room with the cameras going, maybe our administration units need to sit down and really go over what makes sense, because honestly, if it's not a unanimous vote from Sarasota and Charlotte, 3-1 vote's not going to happen. We need to make sure that we get this right, because these are huge and important decisions. So I just wanted to have that for discussion, because we're not going to talk about budget again. It's only here on the agenda.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Any other discussion? If not, I have a motion and a second for approval of the
Consent.
lost train of thought. Consent agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to our regular agenda. Number 1, Mr. Rickard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members, Richard Anderson of your staff. Item 1, as usual, is our water supply conditions update. What I'm going to go through is the water supply conditions here at the Peace River facility through about the middle of May, and then the water demands and usage from each of your utilities for the month of April. So when we put this presentation together in the middle of May, we had a total of 0.15 inches of rain in the Peace River Basin. So virtually no rain whatsoever the first 2 or 3 weeks of the month. Since that time, we've had 4 inches of rain in the basin through the end of May, and another 4 inches the first week of June. So all told, 8 inches of rain, which has really helped, as you'll see in a few minutes on the slides. I don't know if y'all can see this.
It's in front of us.
I don't believe the pointer shows up on your screens, does it? No. So anyway, so we're sitting at right about 4 inches of rain for the month of May, about the average. So looking pretty good, as you'll see here in a minute on the river flows. As usual, springtime river flows extremely low. We were down to about 58 CFS in the river at the beginning of May. As we sit here today, we're at 1,200 CFS with plenty of water flowing in the river. Water has already flushed out, and we're actually starting to take water off the river as of Monday. As of 2 days ago, we started to refill the reservoir. So everything seems to be looking real good and on schedule for the summertime rainy season. As I said, river withdrawals through May 15th were 0. Also for April were 0, had no water available. We are now, as I said, today taking 60 MGD. We're starting to fill the reservoir back up, and we're planning on increasing that flow rate here over the next week or so to go ahead and fill the reservoir back up. Surface water storage. As you can see on the graph, we're sitting at about 4.4 billion gallons in the surface water system mid-May. Today we're down to 3.9, so in 2.5 weeks we used another 500 million gallons from the system. But again, we are starting to fill that back up, and should see that turn around here in the next couple weeks. ASR storage. We did use ASR this spring. We took out about 430 million gallons out of that system. So we're sitting here today at about 8.3 billion gallons in the ASR system. And if we calculate about 60% of that as usable storage, right at 5 billion gallons of usable storage in the ASR system. And that translates into using our 34.7 allocations, about 9 months of supply. So as we enter the rainy season, we still have 9 months of supply available for use. And that's through the end of April, actually. All right, now if we take a look at the demands, and this again is for the month of April. The authority's capacity is 34.7 in allocations. We made 34.7, 34.68 in the month of April. So we are producing 100% of our contracted allocations at the facility. Your customer and city and county facilities produced 58.04. Total was almost 93 million gallons of water produced for the month of April. So extremely high production for that month. Of that, about 5 MGD was sent from Manatee County to their consecutives. So the total used by the authority and authority customers was 87.9 million gallons. Now going looking at the county usages for county by county. For the month of April, Charlotte County used about 13.5 from the authority, which is 84% of their allocation. Produced another 0.8 from Burnt Store for a total of 14.35 for the month. The bottom graph, I changed this up a little bit this month. What I'm showing here is the last 12 months for each customer of what you have used from the authority's facilities. So the red line is your contractual allocation, in this case Charlotte County 16.1. The blue line is your average use for the past 12 months. In this case Charlotte was 11.8 million gallons a day. As you can see, your peak month was back in March, 13.65 used for the month of March. DeSoto County, that line is not purple, it's blue and red, but they're very close together. DeSoto used 8.2 for the month of April, which is 118% of their allocation. Produced another 0.3 from the correctional facility for a total of 1.12 for the month of April. And again, for the 12 months consecutive usage, as you can see, very close to your allocation. You're actually at 0.71, just over your 0.69 allocation. And your peak month was, again, in March of 0.89 MGD from the authority. And Manatee County obviously does not take water from the authority. So what I'm going to show here is their usage within to their customers, and then what they sold outside to their consecutives. So the red line represents their 52 MGD of permitted capacity at the facility. The orangish colors are total production from the facility, and then the blue lines are what they use within the county. So for the month of April, they used about 43 MGD within the county and 51.4 from their deliveries to their consecutives customers. That included 3.5 to Sarasota and 4.8 to the consecutives on the coast. So for the month of April, they produced 99% of their permitted capacity. And going down to the bottom chart there, their peak month was again in March, just over 52 MGD total produced, and an average for the year of about 43 MGD. And Sarasota County, in April they took 16.8 from the authority. Again, imported about 3.5 from Manatee County, and self-produced about 5 MGD for a total of 25.4. Looking at their 12-month usage, out of their 1506 allocation, they have averaged about 14.46 for the year, with their peak month being this month of April, 16.8 MGD from the authority. And the City of Northport. City of Northport relies on their system in the rainy season when their Myakkahatchee Creek has plenty of water to treat. And in the dry season, they rely heavily on the authority. So that accounts for these peaks and valleys you see on the bottom chart. But for April, they used 3.5 MG, from the authority. About 500,000 from their facilities, and very little water exchange with the Sarasota County. Total usage was 4.05. Again, their allocation with the authority is 2.86. Their average for the year was about 1.5, with their peak month being, again, April of 3.51 MGD. And finally, last slide here is the regional deliveries. This is the production at the Peace River facility. Red line represents our plant capacity of 51 MGD. The blue line is our contractual obligations of 34.7. And as you can see, the last 2 months, March and April, we have been producing right at our 34.7 number. So with that, I'll be happy to, oh, I'm sorry, one more slide. The utilization slide, Mr. Manson's favorite slide. Permitted capacity within the region, 104.7. In April, again, we used 92.7 MGD. So that was 88.5% of all available capacity was used, only leaving 12 MGD of available capacity for the month of April. So quite heavy on the demands for the month of April. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I like this slide because it really gives us a holistic view of everything that's produced in the region. So I like it. 2 questions. When we went back to the peak pumping, it looks like your peak capacity to pull water off when it's really flowing is 60 million gallons a day. Is that correct? Because when you get back to that curve from about 8 slides, right, keep going. There's like a flat line. Yeah, right there. So is that our peak?
No, the physical capacity at the pumping station is 120 million gallons a day.
Really?
Right. So obviously, when we have a lot of water flowing, we try to optimize electrical usage, so we don't want to run 4 pumps if we don't have to. If we can start filling things back up and run 2 pumps at 60, we'll do that. Okay. So it's more of an economics thing for us to try to save dollars on the power bill.
Next question: Do you alternate the pumps? Because you don't just run 2 pumps all the time.
Right.
You activate, you kind of move them around like cylinders in a car when you're running at high efficiency.
Yep, they'll run 1 and 3 one day and 2 and 4 the next. Yes.
Perfect. Great. And then you go to the Sarasota curve for a second. So that's because of item 9 on consent. That's going to kind of, I hate to use the pun, blown out of the water, because they're going to jump over that peak considerably while they're doing their work and requiring additional water from the authority, from the pooled water that nobody's using. So they're paying for it. But
correct.
So in the future, you're going to have to put like an asterisk or something, because they're going to pop over, but you'll have to color that box, because otherwise it's like, what happened?
Right, and that'll be through the last 3 months of this fiscal year. So in August, I'll do an update or something similar to that to show that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hold on, I ain't done.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
just making sure everybody else, I was being polite, giving everybody else first chance. No, I just want to know, what's the deal with March and April? Does everybody wash their cars that month, or?
They're all here.
Yeah, no, they should be gone in March and April.
They can't be using water because they're all on the highway driving around.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I just wondered, I don't know if it might have been dry time or whatever, people were watering more or doing whatever, but it's a trend you see, so.
Yeah, I can't speak to the watering because I don't have info on that, but yeah, it's definitely was a dry couple months. As you saw, there was no flow in the river, and the rains were, I think we had 0.3 rain in April and almost nothing in May until recently, so.
Word to the wise, if you won't water your grass, you don't have to mow it as often. Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
I will tell you, driving around Charlotte County March and April, they don't leave until after Easter and tax day, so they're still around, flushing toilets, taking showers. It's just busy.
I think a lot of them got where they stay. But anyway. All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Let's move on to agenda item number 2. Ms. Laura.
Good morning, Laura Donaldson with Manasota, Santana Commissioners. It's nice to be back. I don't get to come to these meetings very often anymore, so it's nice to see all of you. So I'm Laura Donaldson. I am a shareholder with Doug Manson, and I am one person of your legislative team. Our firm hired Katie Kelly this last January. We're very excited. She's been involved in the political arena since she was in high school. And she pretty much knows everyone. I know Mr. Coates and other authority staff got to meet her while she took them to meet with the governor's office and the legislature this past spring. So in your packet, you have a draft legislative report. It's draft because it's ever changing. Yesterday, the governor signed a bill dealing with retirement. So I'm gonna just do some highlights if you have specific questions, because I don't wanna repeat what you have in your packet, but I'm gonna do a bigger picture about what happened. So it was very exciting. Session started and ended on time. Not only did it end on time, it actually ended in the morning on the last day of session, which is not something that's happened recently. Normally it goes late. Last year it actually went over. So altogether, 1,828 bills were filed. And out of that, 1,679 were general bills. Only 386 passed one chamber, and only 320 of those passed both chambers. So it was substantial, and there were 36 additional bills that were passed that were local bills, joint resolutions, and memorials. There really wasn't a lot of action this session. It was kind of interesting. We joked midway through session that we didn't know if anything was gonna pass because it was just really slow. There were some major topics that the legislature considered, which I won't get into, but it was weird. There were times that we were asked to leave the fourth floor. There were times I got called for a meeting, and normally legislators come in and out. If you've been up there on the fourth floor, they come out of the chamber doors. They were not allowed to come out of the chamber doors. You actually had to go, like I had to sit outside the House Speaker's office until the member came, and then we walked into their office because of the activities that were happening on the fourth floor related to some of the controversial topics. And not every topic in Tallahassee. It looks like there are a lot of controversial topics, but there really are not, but they meet the newspapers. The governor so far has approved 104 bills, and he's vetoed recently 2 bills, and one of them is a priority of the Senate president that she's been working on for years. And she finally got it passed, and the governor vetoed it. It was dealing, commissioner, with doctor titles. It's the professions bill, which is something that President Pasadomo is trying to resolve. With that, the budget has not been sent to the governor yet, and that was one of the priorities. As you can see, we had 3 projects that the authority approved. One was included in the budget. I won't go into the details of how interesting that was to make sure it got in the final budget, but you know, members get a certain amount of money effectively that they get to decide what they want to use those projects for, and we were successful in getting the $10 million for the reservoir. Luckily, our project was not included within the Florida Tax Watch, the budget turkeys that they release every year. The authority $10 million reservoir was not included. In addition, the budget altogether was $117 billion, largest budget yet. It's horrible to say, but the hurricane helped drive that because people were spending money for repairs and things like that. DEP had a $4.9 million budget, or $1 billion budget, sorry. I mean, our budget was more than. And just for land acquisition, $1 billion was allocated by the state for land acquisition. Huge amount of money. This is consistent with what Governor DeSantis has been asking for. $850 million is for wildlife corridor purchases. It's pretty interesting what they've been doing, in $100 million for state lands. In here, there's $320 million for resiliency. The authority has been able the last 2 cycles to get money for projects through the resiliency funding. So it was very good that this was highly appropriated. They got funds because we have been successful with that.
Thank you. What's the window of use on those resiliency funds? So in other words, $320 million this year, maybe there's going to be hopefully as much or more next year, but if, let's say we were given 50 or 100 million, how do you have to spend that? If you have like a 5-year window, I'm just thinking about brackish water or the reservoir expansion, you know, sometimes they want it spent that year. So what's the window, do you know?
Mr. Chair, it's not based on 1 year, because it actually takes several months to get the contract in place.
Right.
So I think with the last, was it 3 years? 2026 for our current grants. They look at that when they're funding it.
Good to know, thank you.
And I will just say, it's been successfully funded. I think 1 year was 100 million, 200 million. I mean, this seems to be where the money's going. In part because the governor, kind of has a say over it, right? Because the projects are going to DEP, and I understand the governor has veto power, but he's obviously a little bit more control over his agency on what projects are being funded. The other interesting thing is, not on this list, but I do know, especially with DeSoto County, $350 million was appropriated for a program to deal with Hurricane Ian and Nicole. I will tell you, Lee County had over $300 million of appropriation requests filed, and none of them got funded. And the theory is because I'm telling you this because I think this is going to be the basis of any future funding program that the legislature does regarding hurricane relief. The governor's office is very concerned about double dipping, where you're getting money from, governments are getting money from insurance, from FEMA, and so, because I had a $19 million fire station, and they kept saying, well, which part is getting money from FEMA? Which part is this? What's this? How do we make sure we're not giving you money that you're getting money from somewhere else? This program is through DEM. It just came out. They're starting to do workshops this week. And it's a way to ensure that there's not that double dipping. And in fact, the language says if they fund you, let's say 100%, and then you get money from FEMA, you have to pay the state back. And so I think for those governments that are impacted by the hurricane, and I mean, the authority has been impacted by the hurricane before, special districts do have the ability. We actually fought to make sure special districts got into the program because this is the program that's going to be copied in the future. We wanted to make sure we had the ability to participate. So anyone that has damage, I know DeSoto had damage, I would definitely look at the DEM website this week because it's a lot of money with that one. And then just going through really quickly, there were a lot of water bills that were filed. Really not a lot of water quality bills passed, not anything related to water supply. I will tell you that will be different. Speaker Renner is very knowledgeable about water issues and is concerned about water quantity issues. There's a subcommittee for the first time ever that is water supply, not just water quality. And so there will be some major Chapter 373 legislation next year. I don't know what it's going to look like. I know there's going to be a new funding program, kind of where it's a loan program, very, very low interest rates, but it's going to be a tremendous amount of money where local governments, rather than applying to the legislature to get funds, will be going through this program for funding. I don't know if anyone wants me to go through all of the things, but I'm just going to, anyone? Okay. I'll just finish this up really quickly because I know you guys love having me here. So session starts January 8th. I know we're already talking to the authority about coming up for projects and having to get permission from the board about what the legislative agenda is. Delegation meetings crazily because we just finished, right? I mean, I feel like I just finished a couple of weeks ago, not, I guess now a month. I just saw the first delegation meeting scheduled in August. I know we're talking to members already about substantive legislation, so it's a very quick turnaround. We will be back. I'm hoping we'll be able to have Katie at the meeting where we're going to propose the legislative delegation, but I think it's going to be sooner rather than later because if the delegation meetings are in September and October, we want to make sure that the authority has the ability to put its priorities in front of the delegations. The other, just final for two of our counties and the authority, Senator Albritton's got one more session until he takes over as Senate President, which is great news for the authority. Following Senator Albritton, another great news for the authority is Senator Boyd is now slated to become Senate President, and so it is great to have members, the Senate President to come from our communities. If you don't have any questions, that's it.
Do you have any questions?
Just a comment. We love having you and listening to what you have to say, so.
I'm a little like boring today because I just got in from LA last night, so that jet lag is real. I'm normally much more entertaining in these presentations, but I try to moderate from the jet lag, and I appreciate it. I always love coming down. And we were talking about how great it is to drive down to DeSoto County. The drive it's always great to see, you know, real Florida and the ag lands. And although, Mr. Chair, I don't think I've seen you without a cowboy hat in a while. Threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right.
But, and then finally, when, I know, like, Commissioner, you were in charge of, the head of FAC for a while. You know, if you come up to Tallahassee, we have an office a block away from the Capitol. I know you have your own lobbyists, you have the association lobbyists, but if you want to go see someone or just need to have a question, we have a copier, we have a place, a conference room that you can come and make phone calls. And so please, you know, let us know how we can be of service while you're in Tallahassee.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you. But I do appreciate the fact that you have a proactive stance about, you know, the legislative delegation meetings, the committee weeks, getting our agenda. It's a constant process. It's not, hey, it ended, let's wait till the next session. We've learned over the last decade, we have to be proactive. We've got to keep pushing our agenda forward. And as soon as it's done, it's a continuous process. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are continually on. That's the way you have to be.
I appreciate that, thank you.
And even though you just got in from LA, you're still not as boring as some of the other folks that work with you. Thank you.
He and I worked together for so long, he's used to that. Thank you so
I hope
much.
he knows those things.
I only go to Tallahassee when she tells me I have to.
I got you. All right, next we have agenda item number 3, Ms. Terry. And this will require a board motion when she gets done.
Wow, I've got some big shoes to fill, don't I? It's going to be exciting about capital improvement plans. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Terry Holcomb with Authority staff, good morning. This item is presented for board approval, and the motion will be requested at the end of the presentation for board consideration. I just wanted to note that the draft 5-year CIP and 20-year capital needs assessment was presented to the board at the April meeting, and no changes have been made to this presentation since that time. So today's presentation will step through just a real brief overview of our 5-year CIP and 20-year CNA projects, and then we're going to highlight some of the key 5-year CIP projects, and then just conclude with a request for approval by the board. So real quick, just going through an overview of our CIP and CNA. By the numbers here, we have 14 projects that are outlined in the next 20 years. 8 of those projects are regional water transmission main projects, and 3 of those will be in our next 5-year CIP. Those run here 2024 through 2028. We have 4 water supply projects identified in the CIP-CNA. 3 of those are currently in some sort of design process and are in our 5-year CIP. And then we have 2 projects that are system-wide benefit projects. Both of those projects fall within our next 5 years, so they are included in our 5-year CIP. So to secure funding for each of these projects, we work with your professional staffs alongside with our consultants to help us develop those cost estimates and schedules so that we can go after the funding mechanisms, whether that's coordinating with the Water Management District or going up to Tallahassee and presenting these projects to them so that we coordinate regionally on those projects for grant funding opportunities. So the 5-year CIP for years 2024 through 2028, it's shown here with total expenditures of approximately $815 million. These expenditures are broken out by project type, and you can see that about 81.4% or $663 million is set aside or budgeted for water supply projects. We have a little over 15%, or $123 million identified for transmission system projects, and a little over 3% of the budget, $29 million for our 2 system-wide benefit projects. I just wanted to call your attention to, and I think Commissioner Constance, you kind of brought this up, that the water supply portion is really carrying 2 parallel expansion projects, or surface water option projects. We've got the surface water expansion at 18 million gallons per day. That's a combination of the reservoir project with the plant expansion. And we're also carrying the brackish water RO project, and that is estimated at 5 million gallons per day. Now, only one of those projects is going to continue past the preliminary design phase and actually go into final design and construction. The other project then will get moved out into our 20-year CNA. So only one of the water supply option projects that's right now in the 5-year CIP will actually move forward. So we've been very fortunate in past years to have received matching funds from the Water Management District for our water supply and regional transmission main projects. This chart illustrates the benefits there with total expenditures of over $815 million. It's anticipated that the Water Management District will co-fund our regional transmission main projects as well as a portion of our water supply projects for up to $184 million over the 5-year period, making the authority's estimated contribution around $632 million. So the 20-year capital needs assessment, or CNA, includes not only those projects that we just covered in the 5-year, but then it extends the next 15 years worth of projects that takes us out to 2024, from 2024 through 2043. So the total projected investments in the 20-year CNA is just over $1 billion, $1.1 billion, with the distribution on the CNA budget at about 64% for new water supply projects, or $703 million. We've got transmission mains at about 33% of that budget, coming in at $360 million, and about 2% for those system-wide benefit projects, still the same 2 that were in the 5-year CIP, at $29 million. Now here again, you can see the benefits to the region through the district's cooperative funding program. The 20-year capital needs assessment investments of just over $1 billion may be offset by as much as $306 million for qualifying projects. And the red outline there that you see in the first 5 years, that's our CIP. And you can see that that makes up a majority of our next 20 years worth of funding. So the heavy lifting is really going to occur in this next 5 to 6 years with the construction of our new water supply projects and those regional transmission mains. We've got capital spending projected to be reduced significantly. You can see between years FY29 to FY 2043, those obviously come down significantly. So let's just highlight some of the key projects in our 5-year CIP. Again, the 3 new water supply projects in the 5-year CIP are located all at the Peace River facility. These projects have been identified to meet the next increment of water supply capacity to help meet our customers' demands. And the surface water expansion project, that consists of 2 supply projects. That's the reservoir coupled with the expansion. And that's currently designed to yield an additional 18 million gallons per day on an annual average day basis. And then we have the brackish water RO project, which is estimated to yield approximately 5 MGD of supply. These projects are currently running in parallel through the preliminary design phase. And as each project progresses through design, we will be able to identify their respective yields. We'll be more certain on the budgets, and we'll also be able to identify those construction schedules so that both those projects can be evaluated on an apples-to-apples comparison with respect to the million gallons per day versus the cost per gallon. Our customers will then have to make that decision as to which project we move forward with into final design and construction. So there's 3 transmission system projects in our 5-year CIP. These should look very familiar to you. The first one there is the Phase 3C pipeline. That consists of about 7 miles of 42-inch diameter transmission main, and that serves the growing needs in northeastern Sarasota County. And we do have a existing interlocal agreement with Sarasota County for the construction of that pipeline. Second transmission project is the Phase 2B pipeline. Again, 13 miles of large diameter, in this case 42-inch diameter water main to serve the growing demands in Charlotte County. And there is an interlocal agreement for that transmission pipeline as well in place. The third transmission project is a Kings Highway pipeline replacement project. This project consists relocation and replacement of an existing 24-inch line that runs down Kings Highway. That road is being widened, and in concert with Charlotte County's widening, we are relocating a portion of that line, approximately half a mile of pipe, to be outside of the pavement. And that's going to take place from just west of I-75, goes under the interstate, and will terminate at the DeSoto County line. So those transmission main projects are going to extend our regional transmission system about 22 miles, so we'll have about 102 miles total of large diameter transmission mains in the system. And then finally, our 2 system-wide benefit projects. They consist of a new water resources and construction building, as well as our partially treated surface water ASR project. Currently, we have 10 full-time staff that work out of a renovated ranch home and the associated garage. They're approaching about 60 years of age right now, and the buildings have really reached their useful life. We've gone through several renovations at the facilities. Hurricane Ian did have some additional damage to them, so we are looking to construct a new water resources building. The second system-wide benefit project is our partially treated surface water ASR project. Currently, the authority's ASR system stores fully treated drinking water, and upon recovery of that, we send it back to our reservoir system to be treated again prior to distribution to our customers. So this project proposes to implement the use of partially treated water from the reservoir system. We'll filter it, disinfect it, and then propose to put it into the ASR system, and it'll significantly reduce costs to our customers as well as improve yield and system efficiency. So with that, we can move on to the motion. It's a real quick synopsis of our 5-year CIP, 20-year CNA. I just wanted to remind you that approval of the CIP CNA does not constitute approval of any of the projects in that document. It's a budgeting document, helps inform our planning process, and will help inform the FY24 overall budget.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions of Ms. Holden?
Thank you. I have a few questions. So, getting back to the last statement about partially treated water, so I thought we were trying to get away from doing too much treatment. So we were treating it to drinkability and then putting it down the ASR, and now we're going to back off. How far off are we backing? I mean, are we just filtering out the particulate matter and then just putting it in the ground?
Disinfecting it prior to putting it back into the ground, yes. And this is through a permitting process we're going through with DEP.
How much were we putting drinking water into the ground?
Correct, a fully treated drinking water.
Okay.
That's state required right now. We're going through that process to allow us to put partially treated surface water.
All right, so if I'm looking at the proposed plan, our understanding is that in the 5-year, it's really not going to be 663 eventually, because one of those projects is going to fall off.
Correct.
So now you're fully funding it, but it's actually going to be either 444 plus 98. I'm sorry. It's either going to be, but now, let me back up. The 120 million for the Peace River expansion, that's going to happen either way because you still have to increase the ability to treat the water.
I'm sorry, I'm going to follow you. The 120 million.
So, yeah, so in the 5-year plan.
That's the surface water treatment plant portion. Yeah.
Right, so either way, that has to get done. Slide number, go back, yeah. So either way, most of that has to get done because whether we're doing brackish or we're doing the new reservoir, we still have to increase the ability to treat the water, or is less of that going to get done if we don't do the reservoir?
So the brackish water RO treatment project, that 98.5, is a treatment plant in itself. It's the wells and treating of that
Okay, so
water.
that's
we won't,
standalone.
it's standalone.
Okay, all right. So this 663 number is either going to be 444 plus 120 or 98.5, depending on which direction we go.
Exactly.
Okay. I just want to bring up the fact that I found this interesting. Did some math. I like math. It's really true. So if we look at the 5-year, that's 815 million fully funded, which we know is not the case. And then we only have another, 200 million or so in the next 15 years. But if you look at how it's funded, of the 815, we only have 184 million of outside money, meaning we're only getting matched at 22.5%. Historically, we get 50% from whatever sources outside of the authority's reach. If you look at the next phase, the next 15 years, where we're adding in
Another 217 million.
yeah, right. We're getting funded that portion at only 28%.
And those 15 years, that's...
I'm sorry, no, I misspoke. Of the whole $1 billion, 92 million, we're getting funded at 28%. So I broke out the last 15 years, getting 122 million of outside funding to the 277 million cost. Now we're up to 44%. That's more like it. So it still concerns me that we're getting shorted by, I don't know, the state, outside funding, and I know that we're sort of still early in the window, and this is where, Laura, I hope her ears are open, but, with Senator Albritton coming on and then Senator Boyd, we really need to make sure they understand this is their backyard. Manatee's going to need water in the future. If everybody's pushing for this reservoir, we need to see state skin in the game. Because I will tell you, and I keep repeating it, but I think it's important to repeat, my ratepayers are not going to pay 78% or 82% or whatever it is of the cost of our share of this reservoir. We're not going to be able to get them to swallow that pill. So in fairness, and just going by historical, and maybe Mr. Manson, you can tell me, but in the past, haven't we been getting at least 50%?
We were getting 50% from the cooperative funding at the Southwest Florida Water Management District. The difficulty is they've been doing that out of reserves that they held, and they don't have that money.
They're exactly. I mean, and no fault that the mechanism has changed, their funding has changed, so the picture changes. But we're going to need basically a state earmark. We're going to need the state to step up and say either they want this area to continue to grow or they don't. Because you can't ask people that are already opening the spigots and getting water to pay double or more for their water so that their streets can be more crowded and there can be more people walking around. That is not going to get sold to the public at all. But if the state says, we get it, we need to make sure that this area grows evenly, we're going to help support that development, then they don't have to worry about it.
Understood.
The only thing I'd add, Commissioners, I think one way of doing that, just, positive things, is we've got assuming the governor signs this year's budget, they will provide $17 million in the last 2 years. Keeping that up over 10 years, that would be marvelous. So again, we should probably look to sending letters, assuming that the budget gets signed. Thank you, and we'll be grateful, but we needed to get it next year, and we need it for the next 10 years.
Totally agree, and that gets back to our advocacy and the fact that it's consistent and continuous, and that we get all all 4 counties involved to make sure that, Senator Albritton's our senator. It's great. Senator Boyd is Manatee County Senator in Sarasota. So, it's perfectly laid out, but we got to make sure it happens. That's all.
Right? They need to hear from us, right?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the scheduled projects to be incorporated into the, I move approval of the 5-year capital improvement plan and 20-year capital needs assessment for 24-25.
Okay,
Have a
That's
motion.
our 2443. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long.
2024, 2043.
Yes.
Okay. Have a motion by Commissioner Constance. Do I hear a second? Second. Got a second by Commissioner Smith. He's Commissioner, right? I guess so. Yeah, it's Commissioner Smith. Just making sure. All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Then item number 4, Mr. Jim, you're up. This also report will require board action.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jim Guida, your Water Resources and Planning Director. I'll be presenting to you today the contract scope and fee with Carollo Engineers for the preliminary design and testing for the Peace River Brackish Groundwater Project. As mentioned by the chairman, this is an action item. We'll have a staff recommendation and proposed motion at the end of my presentation. First, I'd like to give a recap of previous actions and a summary of how we got here today. Just a little bit of background on the authority's water use permit, the PRF being the Peace River Facilities Water Use Permit. That permit was renewed in 2019 for a period of 50 years, and it is good until February of 2069. That permit was actually issued for 100% surface water from the Peace River. We pursued a modification in 2022 and received that modification in October of 2022 for an additional alternative water supply source in the form of brackish groundwater. And our intent is to use that in a conjunctive manner with the surface water supply that we already have. The permit authorized 9 million gallons a day of withdrawal of brackish groundwater. And after RO treatment at an assumed efficiency of about 80%, we anticipate we'll have an allocable finished water supply of 5 MGD annual average, 6 MGD peak month, and 7.2 MGD max day from that. The benefits from having brackish groundwater is it certainly increases the diversity of our sources. It'll also increase our drought resistance and also our overall system reliability. Continuing with the recap, at the December 2022 board meeting, and as has been touched on here today, there were some concerns expressed about preliminary cost estimates for the surface water expansion project. And there was dialogue about how we might go about handling those costs, how we might look at funding considerations and an overall path forward. So as part of that, we decided that we would continue the design and value engineering of the surface water expansion project. We'd continue to pursue additional state and federal funding for our projects. And lastly, we would pursue 30% design of the brackish groundwater project, which the intention was to provide the board a potential alternative to the surface water expansion project should the board decide they did not want to move forward with that. As far as the consultant selection process, these are the milestones to date. And as I described to you on the water use permit authorization was issued back in October. The board decided to pursue 30% design in December. We advertised for statements of qualification in February. We received the statements of qualification from interested consultants in March. The selection committee then met thereafter, made a unanimous recommendation to the board that Carollo Engineering be the consultant undertake the work, and the board approved them as the top ranked firm in April. And here today we are to talk to you about the contract and work order to carry out the work for that project. There are eight key components to the project. I won't get into all the details on all of them, but I would like to point out a couple of the more work-intensive parts of the project. The first task 3 that I'd like to point out to you is the test well construction, development, and testing. That is a drilling and testing program where we're going to try and characterize the aquifers and the confining units, also the groundwater quality that we have at the facility. Task 6 is the preliminary design of the treatment plant itself, the RO plant, which will obviously be an important part of the project. Lastly, I'd like to point out that there's some additional important activities we're looking to pursue here. We're looking at trying to do a number of different permitting related activities, but the most important ones are modification of the water use permit. We hope to be able to pursue an increase in the authorized withdrawal quantities, and with that increase the finished yield that we could actually get from the project above and beyond the 5 MGD annual average that I described. So that's an important part of it. And lastly, by March next year and by the April board of next year, we hope to have a 30% design package and also the engineer's cost estimate for the project. So a lot to do in a very short period of time. As far as the work order before you and the schedule and the budget for it, as you can see, we're going to begin immediately with this work. We are under a very aggressive schedule, and we hope to begin to be complete for the April board. We did add a task 9, which is an owner's allowance for any unforeseen circumstances that might potentially come out of the process. But that is the overview on the schedule and the budget. And lastly, the staff recommendation and the recommended motion is before you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Board members, any questions?
Quick question, funding source for this right now, is this grant funded or is this coming out of our reserves?
This would come out of our $100 million loan that we have.
Okay.
Any other questions? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I move a motion to approve the professional services contract with Carrillo Engineers for the Peace River Brackish Groundwater Supply Project and authorize the Executive Director to execute work order number 1 under the contract for preliminary design and testing services in the amount not to exceed $5,488,750.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Smith. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Thompson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Jim. Okay, agenda item number 5. Richard.
All right, good morning again, Commissioners. Richard Anderson of Authority Staff. Item 5, we're going to attempt to shed some light on our efforts to provide conceptual solar design at the Peace River facility. So, what I'm going to do is give you a quick background on where we've had these efforts to date, and then with me today is Mr. Steve King with Black & Veatch. He's been the project manager on all 3 efforts so far, and he's going to get into some of the details of this final effort and where we stand on solar. This is not, there will be no motion for this item, but we would really appreciate your consensus and questions and thoughts on these efforts so that we can move them forward a little bit. So as I said, just a little bit of background. The board asked us in 2018 to take a look at what our solar options might be at the Peace River facility. That included looking at small installations like a 200 kilowatt unit that would be more like a pilot unit, all the way up to a 75 megawatt unit, which is the limit of what FP&L is building now, 74.99 megawatt systems. At that time, there was no solar incentives, tax credits. The 2 megawatt system payback at that time was 18.4 years. We also looked at partnering, like I said, with FP&L. They were not interested in either using our facility land or creating some kind of a partnership where we built it and sold them the power. So that was not an option at the time. Moving forward, 2021, again, still no tax incentives or credits available, but the technology had improved to the point where payback was now down to 9.7 years, so getting better and better. This evaluation in 2021 looked at smaller systems, again, 200 kilowatts up to about 4 megawatts. It included looking at things like rooftop solar at the facility, carport systems. Those, as Steve will probably allude to, weren't really economically feasible, so those did not work out. We were too small to have stuff like that installed in our facility. So moving forward to 2023, power costs, as you all know, have been going up. 2022, we saw a 27% jump in our power bill. It's come down a little bit since then, but not much. So that created the initiative to go ahead and look at this one more time. We focused on ground-mounted solar installations, fixed tilt units, and there now are, as you're going to hear, incentives available to make these things more economically feasible, driving the payback down on a 2 megawatt system to 6.6 years. This is just a quick chart that shows the industry trend. As you can see, the solar production in gigawatts is on the left. It's been trending up for the last 10 years or so. while the unit costs are coming down, you see that little blip, that's the COVID blip right there in 2021. But in general, the solar costs are coming down. So it actually was probably advantageous to us to wait or not do anything up until this point. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to cover the details of his project to date. So, you want to introduce us? Okay.
Commissioners, thank you for having us in. My name is again Steve King with Black and Beach, for the record. So we looked at 4 scenarios, I guess technically 5. The first one being 1.5 megawatts. It's assuming maybe if there was a size that it was a little bit smaller, because there's a 2 megawatt limit that we'll get into a little bit with Florida, and FPNL has a 2 megawatt limit with net metering that they limit private, essentially private ones that they don't build. Size, so we're just looking at a little bit smaller off of the 2 megawatts, and then again we looked again at the 200 kW. We looked at the option to maybe add batteries. Pretty much the only time we'll mention that because the batteries don't pay for themselves, and it's not economically, doesn't make sense. And then we looked at potentially adding, if the authority were to add a second power meter at the facility, but again, it's too early in the process to understand what that would do, because you don't know what the rates are going to be offering at that time if there was a second power meter and things like that. And we'll get into that in a second, but you're already paying the best rates at your facility now, and if there was a need for another one, it was too complicated to figure out how to, if we had a second meter. So the incentives that are available through the federal investment tax credit and through the Inflation Reduction Act, which the government passed in 2022, include with apprenticeship programs and paying fair wage, Davis-Bacon, some of your projects if you're borrowing money or using money from federal governments. Probably your contractors are well aware of these requirements. But you can see up to a 30% payback as a direct payment from the federal government. You can get 2 megawatt size, you can get $1.2 million back from the federal government in the form of a direct payment, which is new, essentially giving that to it was already a tax exempt entity. The advantages that FPNL and others have because they're not tax exempt, and so they're taking advantage of tax credits that were never available to you, and so now this is sort of, I would say, leveling the playing field. Anyway, just making money that wasn't previously available to you available. So, mentioned before, we'll touch briefly, the FPNL, state of Florida, has a net metering rule where the maximum that you guys would be allowed per meter is 2 megawatts. That puts you in the highest category. All that really means is that you have to have the most safety equipment and that sort of thing. You have to have a bi-directional meter in case you guys do produce excess electricity during the day. You sell it to them, and then obviously at night or when the sun's not shining, you buy from them. This size does not affect the rate structure that you're in now. And so you still stay on the click rate that you're on, which is grandfathered, not offered anymore. So we did make sure that none of this would affect the excellent rate that you're on now. And this was confirmed that this is still the best rate for the facility. So thinking about the technology for solar in the water, and all these water projects that were talked about, when we were going through them, I could almost design them or have a general layout or know what these things were, because there's very solid industry standards in the water world. Solar does not have that, so the technology is evolving very rapidly from what could be month to month or by the time you buy it now, within a few months, it's already been surpassed in efficiency and size and weight and all that thing. So what that means is it's difficult to follow the traditional design bid build model for solar projects, and we recommend, or the industry is going to lead you to, you get a preliminary design, you buy the equipment, either the authority or if you have a contractor or engineer on board through design build or CMART, you buy it and then you finish the design based on the equipment that you bought. Because again, the industry is changing so fast that if you waited to the end you would have to redesign. You know, you'd have to basically design it multiple times if you went to traditional route, and that's obviously not an efficient way to proceed. So 2023, we looked again at the how much is this going to cost, basically. So the new scenario 1.5 comes in. Total cost, the total upfront payments, just over $3 million, with almost $1 million incentive, so 2.1 net payment, 25-year electric savings of just over $10 million, and then the size that makes the most sense for, or at least our recommendation, is the 2 megawatts without batteries. Again, just over $4 million investment, you get 1.2 back from the federal government. So 2.8 all in, but over a 25-year cycle, which is the standard useful life for solar equipment, is just over $13 million. Another reason the batteries scenario doesn't make sense is that you actually have to, in the 25 years, you have to buy them twice because they only last about 15 years. So it doesn't make sense. You can see you'd have to pay almost $12 million just to help keep shade a little bit with batteries, and it just doesn't make any sense. So 2018, 21, 23, the one in the middle is 1.5. That was new, was not looked at before, but you can see the 200 kW is fairly small. The payback hasn't changed much, it's improving. But the 2 megawatt is, again, gone from 18 years down to 6.6 years as far as a payback. So any point after year 6.6, once the project's complete, is all savings on your electric bill beyond that point. So where would you put it? We looked at preliminarily the areas in yellow are areas where there's, at least based on the national maps and things, there's no wetlands. And that's acres, so a big 55-acre spot there, a couple of 9-acre spots, and then you'll see on this slide we did an initial layout highlighted in the orange circle or orange shape there, and then the star right across the street. The good thing about this site potential is the star is where your electric meter is, and you do have to connect to the backside or the usage side of the meter. So this keeps that transmission cost down. So if this was further away, obviously that would drive that cost up because you'd have to get that power again to the meter. So with that, then we're going to go back to Richard to wrap it up.
Thanks, Steve. So where are we at? So for next steps, Black & Veatch's contract, they're going to complete a preliminary design based on our conversation today. And again, the current recommendation would be to look at a 2 megawatt system. That also includes an updated cost estimate on what that facility would cost to build. We'd love to hear some board conversation, consensus on this item, if we're going in the right direction, if this is something we should continue to look at. And then we do need to decide if we want to move forward, when, how, and if we want to move forward on this item. Next steps would include permitting, getting the Swift Mud approval to use solar on the site. Federal incentives are available through 2033 at this point. They may be extended, but at this point they expire in 2033. So we do have time to put something together and get a project on the books. And as Steve mentioned, the route would be final design with owner direct purchase or a CMAR type application because of the technology is changing so fast that you can't really design it and then build it. You've got to design it around that piece of equipment or around those solar panels. You wouldn't be looking at some type of alternative delivery mechanism. So with that, I believe that's all we had, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Got a bunch.
A bunch, wonderful.
I'm gonna start with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. This item is absolute music to my ears, and I agree. In the past, it hasn't made sense financially, but finally it does. The footprint's down to between 5 and 6 acres. What would it have been, like 20, 30 acres? I mean, it was a lot more. The efficiencies were so far down even 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, I don't recall. It would have been bigger, and it's 5 to 6 acres per megawatt. So this is about 9.7 on the next slide there. So yeah, just under 10. So it is actually shrinking, but generally the rule of thumb is still about 5 acres per megawatt.
So you're going to need just about 10 acres to do the 2 megawatt system. And so my understanding is you're saying that if you design a certain set of panels and equipment, a year later when you go to buy them, they don't make them anymore.
Correct. Yeah. Well, they might make them more, more than likely they either don't or, yeah, correct.
Right. So you have to pretty much pick what you're going to do and then use it. Now that picture right there, is that the lines are highlighted in one section and then darker in another? Are they all going to be put in? Why is there a distinction between those two?
The black,
the blue lines.
The blue lines are the solar panels. The black line is a road, like an entrance.
Right, but the blue lines are heavier in some parts and then lighter in the other parts.
Well, that's because it's on top of trees, basically. There's some trees behind there, so that's just a function
differentiation. Okay.
Of the software that we use. It didn't darken over the trees or whatever. So.
Well, I mean, I am wholly in favor of the 2 megawatt scenario without the batteries. I agree. And then the next question is, what is our usage during the day? Is 2 megawatts enough to basically run that facility out there, period? Or are we still going to need a little more?
Well, even if you did need it, and you will. I mean, the facility's expanding, right? I'm hearing lots of discussions. So, and I think you're only allowed 90% or whatever. There's some rules on how much you can use. FP&L, when they call, because you guys are in the rate that you're in, if they call and say, hey, we need you to go off of, take your system offline, you have to be able to shed a certain amount. And so this is accounting for all that. So I don't remember the numbers offhand, but it's pretty close to, actually we have it in the report, but I just don't have it memorized.
Excuse me. I just know these off the top of my head, so. But our minimum demand daily is about 1,500 or 1.5 megawatts. Peak can be as high as 3.6, but that's when we're running ASR and everything all combined. But average, we're about 2.2 to 2.3 megawatts average per day. So this is just under that. And like Steve said, FPL still has their fingers in a lot of these regulations, so you're only allowed to go up to a certain percentage of your average day. Even though you can build 2 megawatts, you can't use half a megawatt and build a 2 megawatt system. They won't allow you to do that because you have to build it, right size it for your facility is basically what they made you do. So that's what we're trying to do.
Right. Well, and I understand the 2 megawatt limit. So, we have got that meter. I say we go for that. That's great. I would anticipate, though, in the future, Richard was on the call for pre-agenda, another meter down the line. I mean, let's get this one done and then, see how that works, because we probably could substantiate having another meter because we'll be at probably close to 4 and then be able to do that. So it's interesting. So even if we're producing the power, we can't use all of it. They're going to tell us we can only use part of it?
No, we can use everything we produce.
Right.
But you only allowed so much to sell back to the grid.
Okay.
In other words, I couldn't build a 2 megawatt facility if I'm only using half a megawatt and sell them back that amount.
Because that would cost them money.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
yes, they want that.
They're regulated monopoly, right? They wouldn't like that too much.
And
one more thing, we did confirm, you asked a question about the meters, and it's definitely per meter. So if we did expand the facility and we wanted to add solar to a new meter, we would be perfectly fine doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it would be on a separate meter, and you could use, if you wanted to build solar at another facility that was completely separate, that would be fine as well. And then the credits apply per project. It's not per customer or whatever.
Right, so if we get really good at this, we could put solar on the whole roof of the office building and, you know, have a meter over there to do a little bit.
Good.
But this is the majority of our use.
So, yes.
All of our other stuff is pretty low. This is 90+%, 95%.
No, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if mine's questions or statements or maybe comments, but apparently solar is the way to go. I found out here recently, due to a lot of land getting gobbled up around here for solar panels. I don't particularly like that we can't put as big a one in as we want and sell power back, because to me that ain't right. But anyway,
I'm glad you
we
said
got. Well, I don't care. Really. Well, y'all got that about me, but I don't care what's right, wrong. But anyway, I don't have a problem with it myself. I'm sure I used to sign a lot of the checks back in the day, and I seen how big those FTO payments was, and the average person sitting here would probably fall over with a heart attack if they know the kind of money that we paid FPNL. And if there's some incentives there for us, I mean, I know we won't have to pay personal property taxes on them and all that stuff because we're not for profit, and of course other folks don't have to pay neither, but they're for profit. But anyway, I would love to see us get this deal going. I know there's different types of technology. It's the same thing, you know. 40 years ago, we all had a fag phone, and now we got one of these that we can tote in our pocket. So the technology is changing as we go. But hey, let's get it in the ground and start drawing out power and start saving money on the other end. And maybe that way, maybe we can pay for that new reservoir instead of the ratepayers with the savings we get from electricity. But so yeah, looks great to me. That was just one of the questions I wanted to know. You know, is it going to be too much sugar for a dime? Or looking at the numbers, it looks like it works out right in the future. You know, it's a breakdown, but you know, we've got an energy savings of roughly 13 million, and that's over 25 years. Well, I don't know if whoever figured these numbers figured in all the extra cost that's going to be added to our current rate 25 years from now.
There's some assumptions made, yeah.
Okay,
Obviously,
all right.
Hard to predict what they're going to charge you in the future, but yeah, there's an
Exactly.
escalation factor.
Exactly. Well, they tell me they're saving me money, but my electricity bill's gone up significantly in 2 years' time, and they're passing all the savings on to me. But when my electricity bill goes up, I don't like you to tell me you're saving me money, because I ain't changed nothing. Everything's the same. Matter of fact, I'm more upgraded now with all new appliances and things than I was before. But so anyway, I kudos to y'all for working on that, and just make sure that, you know, the only thing I ask is make sure that we get the best thing going down the road. I mean, I know there's the ones that follow the sun like the sunflower does, and there's ones that are fixed, you know, that's kind of faced to the south that catches the sun, and now they got sun out that's kind of, you know, shaped kind of like a rooftop, so you catch the AM sun and the PM sun without having the deal turning. So there's all different scenarios that's floating around there. Now we just need to pick one that we think is going to work best for us and go for it. And I'm sure there's different costs involved. I'm sure the ones that follow the sun, they're more expensive.
They are.
Fixed, and fixed is probably the cheapest. But
Yeah, and the trackers you don't get, which is what the ones that Boo they call the trackers. They historically
use up all your energy following the sun. What about
produce the electricity and send it back to the tracker to
Right.
No, they haven't historically, just the sheer cost of the capital to buy that tractor is not paid for itself. I assume that technology is improving as well, but again, it still hasn't, it doesn't help, it doesn't offset the extra to buy it.
Yeah.
On this side, now for FP&L 75 megawatts, it probably does, but for 2
Yeah.
megawatts, it doesn't.
Roughly, just looking here at these numbers you give me, let's see, capital cost 41.22,500 for 2023. Total cost is 4,122, or 4,122,500.
Correct.
To put that in. So our net capital cost is gonna be 2.8. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I just, hold on one second. Get my ducks in a row here. There's 9.7 acres, right? Roughly the site.
Between 9 and 12, depending on.
I mean, probably net panel under panel 9.7 roughly.
Roughly,
Okay,
yeah.
roughly. So we're just under, about $2,500 under $300,000 an acre for the bill. Is that right? Roughly. Around 300,000.
I'd have to get my calculator.
No, I just done it for you. I just need you to do this.
You're right, it's gonna be under 300,000 acre.
Yeah, it's $297,500 an acre,
Yeah.
roughly, at a 9.7.
But keep in mind, this is gonna be hopefully on Swift Flood land that we manage, so it won't cost us anything.
Right, the land won't cost you anything. I'm just talking about the actual physical cost. And this number you got here, that's including labor and everything. That's not just
That's all in, yeah.
panel. That's everything.
That's
That's
all,
design, labor, and flipping the switch and.
Yep. Startup. Yeah, so there would be, we didn't cover it in here, but there will be some O&M costs, for mowing the grass and things like that, but that's pretty minor, for a system this size.
Okay.
And that's something we did talk about with Black Reach, as we're a water company, we're not an electric company, so we want low maintenance. We don't really think the tilt panels are gonna be something we wanna maintain for 25 years, so we're gonna go with the low maintenance option.
Yeah. I'm actually looking at doing that myself. Do me some panel. But anyway, okay. Any other questions? Will that kind of help y'all?
Absolutely, we've got our marching orders, thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 6. Mr. Jim, you're up again.
Morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jim Guida of your staff. I'll be presenting the repair of damage from Hurricane Ian to Reservoir 2 soil cement. This is an action item, and staff recommendation is at the end. The recommended motion is well at the end of my presentation. So as the board is well aware, in late September, Hurricane Ian made landfall near Costa with 150-mile-an-hour winds as a Category 4, and decided to proceed directly over our Peace River facility. We were under the eye wall for 6 hours. Recorded wind speeds on site were as much as 130 miles an hour. We received about 16 inches of rain in 48 hours, which is nearly a third of what you would normally get in an entire year. So in the storm's aftermath, staff immediately inspected the site. We went to the interior parts of the reservoir where the soil cement installations are, which they are intended to control erosion of any type of high wave action, which is indeed what we witnessed had occurred there. And there was damage to the interior flat plate and to the stair steps. Give you an idea of those terms, the photograph on the bottom left, it's not real easy to see, but at the very top there is the top of the dam. Below that are the stair step erosion control features, and then below that is the flat plate area. So upon that inspection, we invited the engineer of record to come out. They came out in early October. Our engineer of record is Stantec. The good news from that inspection was that the design did do exactly what we wanted it to. It served its intended purpose. It controlled erosion, avoided more significant damage, avoided overtopping as well, and there was no damage to the exterior of the embankment as well. So that was all good news, but that was all above a water inspection, and so Stantec recommended we undertake an underwater inspection as well. So for the underwater inspection, we had engaged Underwater Engineering Services Incorporated. And to give you an idea of the scale of the work that they had to do, this is a 6 billion gallon reservoir, about a square mile in size. The perimeter is about 4 miles. So they had quite a bit of work to do out there. The first thing they did was a scanning sonar survey. And when they were completed with that, they did a diving survey to try and confirm close to the areas that were identified as to the nature of the damage and how you might go about trying to fix it. When they completed that, they gave us a draft report. We shared that with Stantec. There was a bit of collaboration back and forth between the three of us. Ultimately, they generated a final signed and sealed report with recommendations, which Stantec, again, also was part of developing those recommendations. Again, their conclusion was the embankment was safe, it wasn't compromised. But there are considerable repairs that need to be done. We had about 50 sites identified that needed to be fixed. And the concern was that future storms could possibly do more damage if we didn't fix them quickly, and that could cost us even more to try and fix. So with that, in our dialogue with Stantec, they told us of a company known as Ballard Marine Construction that they have worked with on other types of similar installations in the state. They specialize in these types of repairs, particularly underwater repairs. So they have kind of an uncommon skill set and a strong workforce to do this kind of work, is what we were informed. Our current library of consultants do not have the underwater repair inspection capability. So that was an important consideration for us. We knew the hurricane season is coming. We reached out to Ballard. They indicated they're immediately available. They're capable of doing the work. They were ready to get that work underway and to complete all the flat plate work by July 28th, and then the stair steps would be followed up by August 9th. And the authority does have an emergency procurement procedure, and on May 12th, the executive director authorized emergency procurement consistent with our procurement policy with Ballard. Pleased to say that Ballard's been on site since May 22nd. We're about 2.5 weeks into the fixes. Everything's been going really well. We've got a good head start on fixing the problems that were identified. From the budget standpoint, there is a total maximum not to exceed cost of about $1.4 million. Of that, the lump sum fee is about $1 million, and then we have about $400,000 in contingency and owner's allowance, which is only accessible with advanced written approval from the authority. The contingency linked actually to how Ballard had identified a way to try and do some of these fixes, and Stantec reviewed it and said, you know, I think I've got a less expensive way that will also work. And so we actually authorized them to do it Stantec's way, and then budgeted some monies in case Stantec's way did not work in any particular instances. So far so good. It looks like Stantec's methodology is working. And lastly, the owner's allowance was just, again, if there's any unforeseen circumstances out there, we wanted to be able to address those. We do anticipate a majority of the costs will be paid by insurance and our FEMA claim. Just a quick update on where we are on the insurance claim and the FEMA interactions. With the insurance claim, we have two very large repair efforts remaining, particularly the Reservoir 2, which I just described to you. The other one is dealing with some roof repairs on site. We have received $1 million interim payment that we received in May, and we anticipate we will be receiving about another $500,000 as part of the insurance claim. With respect to FEMA, we have to complete the insurance claim first before FEMA will start assisting us, but we have established all the damages and repairs we'd like their assistance with, and they are actually out there doing site inspections now, so we can be prepared to work with them on that. So the staff recommendation, which is not going to be very clearly here, sorry, I could read it to you if you would like, but this is also a recommended motion. I can also answer any questions if you'd like.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions of Mr. Jennings? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make the motion. Make the motion to approve the staff recommendation for the authority board, ratify Executive Director's May 12th, 2023 emergency procurement with Ballard Marine Construction for Hurricane Ian related damage repairs to Reservoir 2 for the total not to exceed cost of $1,434,858.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Thompson. Okay, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hear none? Okay.
I just wanted to compliment Mike on taking the initiative to make these repairs earlier in the hurricane season because it can only get worse if it's damaged and we're hit again. So I commend you on making the executive decision there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the only way we could get lucky if it come from the other direction. Yeah, really bad. Yeah, but okay. All right. Well, we got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Jim. Okay, Ms. Terry, you're up again. Agenda item number 7.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Terry Holcomb with your staff. Regular item 7, the PR3 design and construction schedule update is provided for board information only. There is no action required. So this presentation will provide an update on the design and status of the third-party review efforts for the PR3 project. We'll also review staff's recommended delivery methods for the project, as well as present some of our current funding opportunities. And then we're just going to close with an updated delivery schedule for bringing that project online. Starting with an update on the design deliverables and status of the third-party review. At the April board meeting, HDR presented an update on the preliminary or 30% design phase of the PR3 project. And this phase of the project began in February of last year, 2022, and the team submitted the 30% or preliminary design documents in March of this year. Now, those documents included a basis of design report that outlined the technical design assumptions and aspects of the project components, as well as all of the environmental permitting efforts to date. The submittal also included 4 separate volumes of design plans, and we broke those design plans into different packages. This will allow the contractors that bid on the job to be able to clearly delineate the extents of each of their respective construction projects. Because many of these parts are contiguous, we needed to have a clear demarcation line. So that was a benefit. And you can see there the 4 volumes. We have a volume of design plans for the reservoir project, a volume for the Peace River intake and pump station. Volume 3 is a reservoir pump station, and then volume 4 is all the conveyance piping for those lines that will connect the new infrastructure to our existing assets. The design documents also provided construction considerations, as well as an updated cost estimate that was presented at the board meeting, and a proposed construction schedule. So the permitting efforts included identifying wetland impacts, both forested and herbaceous by basin. If you're not aware, the R.V. Griffin property is actually bisected by 2 separate watersheds. On the west side, you have the Niagara River watershed. On the east side, you have the Peace River watershed. So delineating the wetland impacts by basin type was really important. And they also identified options for mitigating those impacts. And that might include going out and purchasing bank credits or doing some on-site permittee responsible mitigation. The report also presented the results of the threatened and endangered species surveys. Those have been going on, believe it or not, for over a year and a half. And they also had the regulatory agency coordination efforts to date through pre-application meetings with each of those agencies. So as a requirement of the cooperative funding agreement with the Water Management District, a third-party review, independent, was done on the 30% design package that was delivered, and that was performed by Black & Veatch. They looked at the appropriateness of the design assumptions and the approach, conformance with industry standards, constructability reviews, and the appropriateness of the basis of the cost estimate and the construction schedule. So the independent review resulted in general concurrence with the design assumptions and the approach that was used, and found that the costs were within industry accuracy ranges. So let's review the staff's proposed delivery method for the PR3 project. So as a reminder, we have 4 major project components consisting of the reservoir, the river intake and pump station, the reservoir pump station itself, and all of the conveyance piping to connect those facilities. So when we talk about delivery methods, we're looking at the different design and construction methods that we can use to build a project through the procurement process. And now the pump stations and the pipeline costs, they're mainly driven by the materials of construction, as well as the construction techniques used to install those components. So staff feel that contractor input through a construction management at-risk procurement method will have the greatest value-added impact on these particular cost components. You can see there, construction management at risk, or CMAR. We're looking at delivering the reservoir pump station, the river intake pump station, and the pipelines through that mechanism. The reservoir costs are mainly driven by the contractor's scheduling approach and labor utilization from prior reservoir construction experience. Now we feel that the competitive bids from the contractors on a hard bid will bring the greatest impact and the best value for the reservoir project. So we're proposing to decouple the reservoir from a CMAR and actually go out to 100% design on that and hard bid it. We really think we're going to get a lot more competition in the market that way on the reservoir. So looking at the cost estimates that were done at the 15% and the 30% design, you can see that the pump stations and the pipeline components, those two that are highlighted there, they offered the best opportunity for value engineering as we went through the design. But the reservoir, from $196 to $206 million, there really wasn't a lot of value engineering found there. That makes sense, right? The reservoir had a footprint. The footprint didn't change. The height of the reservoir didn't change. And it's pretty much earthwork. So there wasn't a lot of opportunities to do value engineering. Pipelines, pump stations, a lot of mechanical equipment. You've got a lot of interties. You know, can we maybe connect the system easier, get more flexibility or less flexibility? So we're really able to see those cost savings between the 15 and 30% through the value engineering. So the construction management at risk delivery method will provide the best opportunity to get that early contractor involvement, bringing the CMAR on during that final design process will allow for a collaborative final design phase, providing more value engineering opportunities. We'll be able to identify those early procurement items, those long lead items sooner, get those out for purchase so we can meet the schedule. And the contractor can provide constructability reviews, sitting down with the engineers. They go through that final design process. And then most importantly, we can actually get more certainty in those cost estimates, because that cost is coming directly from that contractor that you've engaged in the process. So let's just take a look at our funding opportunities and how that plays into the project. So along the top of this chart, you can see we've got their different funding opportunities that we've identified to date. Doesn't mean that there won't be more in the future, but this is just what we know of today. We've got grants from the Resilient Florida program, the Cooperative Funding Initiative program from the Water Management District, and then funds from the state appropriations. Along the left column there are the different phases of the project that we anticipate moving through as the project progresses. So we have the final design phase. Just real quick, wanted to point out that the Resilient Florida program, we were fortunate to get the preliminary design phase 100% paid for in FY 22-23. As we move into the final design phase, again, we have received another grant from the Resilient Florida program of $7.5 million. We also have funding from the Water Management District that will cover final design of the PR3 project as well. And you can see the total grant funding for final design is at $14 million. crazy as it sounds, the estimated cost for final design, about $14 million. So the customer share of taking the PR3 project all the way through to final design, that includes that CMAR design process as well as the reservoir final design plans, $0 to our customers for that. It's all been funded through grants. As we move forward into that first package we talked about, that early contractor involvement package, this is where the contractor is going to come in. They're going to help us do a value engineering review of those design plans, sit down in a collaborative manner with the engineer, talk about where we might see long lead items that we need to purchase soon, give us a recommendation on those owner direct purchases for tax saving purposes, as well as getting that cost estimate, that early 30–40% cost estimate by April. That's what we're shooting for. So that early contractor involvement phase, we're estimating right now about $3 million to the contractor for that. And again, we have funding from the Water Management District that would cover 100% of that first work order to the CMAR. So again, zero cost to the customers to move forward with that first phase and get that more certain cost estimate later in or spring of 2024. So then the next phase, we would look at that CMAR, bringing on the construction of the pump stations, the conveyance piping. We've got the Water Management District in there for about $49 million. And this is where the state appropriations comes in, that $10 million that Ms. Donaldson mentioned. It's currently in the budget. We're hoping that it stays in the budget. When the governor signs it later this month, it'll be in there. So we've got $10 million that'll go towards the actual construction. And then that brings our total grant funding for the CMAR portion, the construction portion, at about $59.5 million. With a total estimated cost about $117 for those components. Customer share of that becomes $57.5 million. And then finally, the actual reservoir construction, we anticipate moving into construction on that in January of 2025 after we finish final design and we hard bid it. We still have a remainder in SWIFT funds of about $50 million for that effort. And with an estimated cost of $206 million for the reservoir, that leaves our customer share at about $156. So you can see those bottom numbers there. We've got a total estimated cost of about $340 million, does not include the mitigation. And about $126.5 million of funding has been identified to date, leaving our customer share around $213.5 million. So looking at the delivery schedule, here's an overall schedule of the project, and we're approaching the end of our preliminary design phase. That'll end in September of this year. You can see that it's shown in the dark green. I'm going to see it right up here. We're in preliminary design. We'll be moving into final design. Keep in mind, this is 100% paid for by grants. No cost to the customers to go through final design. So we've got moving into the CMAR. We'd like to bring that CMAR on board shortly after the final design starts. So we're looking at bringing the CMAR on board right around December of this year. That gives us enough time for them to take a look at the plans, do some value engineering, and come up with an updated cost estimate in spring of next year. And then of course we have the reservoir construction happening after that, having all the components complete by the summer rainy season of 27 so that we can begin filling reservoir number 3. So why are we looking to have the cost estimate in spring? So we've got a couple projects. We've got the PR3 project, which is what we've been talking about this morning, looking at having that 30% cost estimate a little higher, more certainty in April, so that we can pair that with the water treatment plant expansion cost estimate that's currently being developed by our owner's agent. They're currently working on the design criteria package for the water treatment plant. We anticipate having a more certain cost estimate for that plant expansion later this year. So now we'll have the plant and the PR3 project cost estimates updated in April. And we also have the brackish groundwater project. Again, with approval today for Corolla to move forward, we anticipate having a 30% design cost for the brackish water RO project in April of next year. So by April, the board will be able to see and make an apples to apples comparison between the surface water expansion project and the brackish water RO project with respect to the cost per gallon. So then you can make the decisions for your customers based on that information. So how do we get the CMAR contractor on board by December so that that leaves them enough time to get us that new updated cost estimate? So we're looking at advertising. We got to back up, right? Much like I'm sure your staff, if you've got a due date, you got to back up a couple months to get it out in front of your board. That's what we're doing. We're shooting for the December 6th board meeting for that contractor's first package. Backing up, we've got to advertise June 30th. We're going to have a mandatory pre-proposal meeting on site down at the Peace River facility on July 14th. We'll have proposals due August 18th. The Professional Services Committee will get together and we'll shortlist those CMAR firms on August 28th. We'll have a presentation to the staff and a selection made on September 18th and bring it to our October 4th board meeting for approval of the CMAR, and then come back to the December 6th for that approval of the CMAR's first package, which would be that early contractor involvement activities. So that is our schedule moving forward. That concludes the update and presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Board member, you have a question?
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So, I guess my first question is, when do these estimates go hard? When is that hit? I mean, because it sounds like it's going to be this year.
No, so that first package that we want to have the CMAR come in, they will give us an updated cost estimate. It's not a guaranteed maximum price at that time, but it's a more certain cost estimate from the contractor. So that range of accuracy becomes much tighter, right? They'll have a kind of a, what we call a rough order of magnitude cost, because they're only at 40% design at that standpoint.
So are you just talking about the pump stations and the pipelines only?
At that time, yes. But we will have the contractor look at the reservoir plans. They will have staff that can evaluate that too and give us an estimate as well. Look at the engineer's estimate and kind of give that a gut check. So we'll have a kind of a complete updated cost estimate by that time.
Okay. I guess it shouldn't be that hard though, and maybe Mike listening on this question, all the working parts I get, and we're getting tighter and tighter on numbers and why the numbers are what they are. But $100 million, $200 million, $300 million, whatever the number is that winds up being the cost to the consumer, and by consumer I mean Charlotte County, Sarasota County, and City of Northport, the customers, we should be able pretty quickly to tell me, or tell us, what's the effect of $100 million going to be on the base rate or on the cost per 1,000 gallons? Can you work up those numbers now? Because if you show me a chart of, hey, if the numbers for the costs come in this window, this window, this window, these are going to be your, I don't need to know how we get there yet. I need to know what the pain's going to be based on the cost level, and then how we're going to, sort of push that back on our ratepayers.
I don't want to speak for our finance department or our executive director, but what we do is we provide those large numbers and the possible breakdowns by customer of the portions that they'd be responsible to our financial advisors, right? And then they have come up with different scenarios based on different rates of funding, bonding, things like that. They've come up with different scenarios that kind of give you that amortization schedule. And then it's up to the customers, obviously, and their finance departments to figure out how they're going to recoup those, whether it's impact fees or rates increases. That's up to the customers. What we can provide is the general breakdown of what that number is going to look like and what a 20 or 30 year schedule, because these projects are so large, we could possibly bond them for 30 years. So there's different options there, and I'm sure Ann and Mike can talk to the finance side of it, but we can provide those numbers to you and your staff so that you can make those decisions on how you're going to implement payment for them. Does that make sense? You guys feel free to jump in anytime.
It does, but I mean, you should have those scenarios pretty worked out right now, don't you? Or
We did.
Ann Leon, your staff, for the record. Yes, Commissioner Constance, we actually have an internal authority model that goes through several options, as well as having escalations in there for O&M costs and those types of situations that we've shared with staff. I think it was back in February or March we shared when we had the initial cost estimates based on the higher dollar amounts we shared with staff, and we can certainly refine them based on this update and share them again with your staff.
well, that's great, because then we can ask them to present them to us, or invite you to come and present them. And then I guess what I'd like is, so board approval October 4th, is there a way that you can present this to us at our last meeting in September, to the Board of County Commissioners in Charlotte County, so we can all 5 of us see it?
Of course.
And then make a decision, and then, you know, our representative will you know, have that, carry that back to the meeting on the 4th.
Sure, yeah,
It's
of course.
pretty close. It's only about a week or 10 days before it, so is that possible?
Yeah, that should be no problem.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our general counsel, Mrs. Manson.
I just had a quick update. I mentioned it to a couple of commissioners before the meeting. It's rare that you have U.S. Supreme Court decisions in the environmental law area. So when they do happen, yeah, we get pretty excited about that. So
We can tell.
I can tell the rest of the audience is just absolutely riveted. So the Sackett versus U.S. EPA, that was a case that talked about what's the jurisdiction, the Clean Water Act jurisdiction. Well, what does that mean? Well, to break it down to Florida, that would now be the delegated authority to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to do what everybody calls a 404 permit. And that's like, what is the Army Corps of Engineers or EPA wetland delineation on your property? Now, in Florida, unlike other states, you know, we already regulate all those wetlands, all the state programs. I don't think there'll be a loss of any wetland destruction or increase of wetland destruction because of this change by the court. But the Supreme Court has definitely tightened or reduced the amount of wetland delineations there would be in, I'll call it non-coastal Florida. Think of it as inland Florida. We're talking about areas from central Florida, where we are even right now, all the way up through the Panhandle. You're still, if you're next to a navigable waterway, and the court's saying you're still going to have that wetland if you have that direct connection. And a direct connection meaning like continuous flow of water. The current law right now being used by EPA and therefore to some extent the DEP, all the rules around discerning this, we're saying that you can have an intermittent connection, which we all know in most of Florida you have these flashy streams, right? They flow in the rainy season, they don't flow the rest of the year. So what that means is in these inland areas like the R.V. Griffin property, we're going to see a very reduced Army Corps of Engineer jurisdiction in those areas. And in many areas like the Manatee County, away from the coast in Sarasota, and obviously DeSoto County, you'll see a reduction of that. And what will that mean is you still have to mitigate because those are state wetlands. And you'll still have to basically not be able to construct unless you show mitigations. But you may not have to get an Army Corps of Engineers permit, which means that usual state permitting time is a year to 2 years to get an environmental resource permit. A standard time for the Corps seems to be somewhere around 3 to 5 years to get the same type of permit. So it'll increase from the standpoint of impact on us, it'll increase our ability to be permitted faster. You know, the lead time on these Corps permits, as you can imagine, is years. And so they'll enable us to be able to move a little quicker in getting projects built, not just us, but your utilities as well, and other construction that you'll see. So we're interested to have it, and we'll have a memo out of the file about it. It just came out on May 25th, so we're analyzing it along with a lot of other people and trying to figure out exactly how it will be implemented.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. That would be my question: is how quickly will this be, you know, sort of put in stone where they're not going to come back and try to, you know, would they try to appeal it?
No, there is no appeal. You know, that's, and I think this is a concept that we're having a hard time getting across, and the lawyers are too, others. In the past, they've changed rules. Remember you've heard the Trump rule, the Rapanos rule. Well, this isn't a rule. This is the highest court of the land has said, this is so. And now the question is, you know, of course, everybody will be debating or advocating, what did the court actually mean? The court's very clear in this decision. So it's effective immediately, which was May 25th. There isn't any, quote, implementation as far as the standpoint of, oh, you can wait for a while before you implement a Supreme Court decision. Now, that doesn't mean politicians won't say that, oh, we're waiting to figure out how to implement this. People that may be against the ruling may wait to try to implement it. But from a standpoint of an individual user, this was an enforcement case. The Supreme Court specifically is saying you, meaning the agency, will have to go out and affirmatively show that you meet our standard that we placed in this case. So it's effective now from that standpoint.
Right, but the scary part is, you know, Congress people, legislators decide to do things like the waters of the U.S. and then they'll come back and say, fine, we'll just write a different law.
Right.
And so hopefully we can get our permitting in the window before that happens. But
well, it'd be very difficult to amend the Clean Water Act with the current composition of Congress, but in the future that could be a possibility. But thank you, that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Coates?
Just one thing, Mr. Chair. In conjunction with Terry's presentation, Tim's presentation on the new water supplies, we're working with your staff on firming up the demand projections. How much water do you really need? Because that's going to be what drives the development of the new supply. We're not going to build something you don't need. So we appreciate the cooperation we've got from your staffs, and we're going to move forward with that. And we hope that our target really is by fall of this year, we'll have those firmed up demand numbers that we can move forward with. We can implement those in the master water supply contract, provides the Exhibit C and Exhibit B parts of that contract, and be able to move forward more, I guess, more deliberately with all of this. So that's it. That's all I've got.
Look, just to clarify a little bit, the reason why we set it up this way is we took the opportunity, we're just updating the contract, but because it came in time with what is it that the customers like, you know, it has to be, the National Water Supply Contract update has to be unanimously approved. So each, the B and C exhibits are what is your demand, what water do you want to purchase from us. So in effect, that contract will be the way it was, that each county, every customer will then vote on that and be able to say, yes, this is what I want. So there isn't any opportunity, like you said, we're representative. We want to make sure we get the amount right on the demand. And that will dictate, as Mike was saying, which project we go forward with. So until we have the numbers and we know what we want, then we'll bring that contract forward. It's ready to go, it's been reviewed, but B and C are basically, yes, this is what we want. We're a subscription model utility, so we have to get that nailed down before we can build the next project.
Board member comments? Anything?
great job, Chair.
Thank you. All right. Well, all I can say is we'd got out of here a lot sooner if Ms. Gilmore hadn't talked so much. With that said, I enjoyed the meeting. Appreciate everybody coming today, and we will see y'all. Let's see, you had it right down here somewhere. We'll see y'all in Manatee County, right? Yeah. See y'all in Manatee on August the 7th, 9:30 a.m. sharp. Thank y'all for coming. Meeting is adjourned.
So you know, I dropped my phone, it's kind of weird, yo. Make it kind of secrets nobody knew. Are you covering for all today? Yeah.
couldn't find a man park in 5.
This is all